this topic that I'm about to present to you, all of our racketeers out there, is definitely not a racket. And it's something that if you're watching the show, if you've been listening to The Real Word, then you're probably in the real estate industry to some degree. And it's an investigation we all need to be aware of and educated on. There was a 3-year Newsday investigation which uncovered widespread evidence of unequal treatment from real estate agents in Long Island. Okay, right. So they focused on a specific area of Long Island. They had 25, let me just frame this up real quick, 25 testers.
Yep.
They had tested 93 agents in 240 hours of secret meetings. There was over 5,700 listings that were analyzed. And in that investigation, 40% of the time, they found that unequal treatment to minorities, when compared white versus minorities, 40% overall of the test, there was unequal treatment delivered, 19% for Asians, 39% for Hispanics, and 49% for Blacks.
Well, so I think it's also worth stating the reason why they decided to do this investigation was because it sounds as though Long Island is so wildly segregated already, and they were trying to figure out why it continues to be segregated and who is actually sort of feeding the segregation. So so I think it's worth stating that, Long Island wasn't just like pulled out of the hat. They were looking at the demographic across the entire island and were noticing sort of these staggering numbers. So they, of course, decided to sort of hit up the agents to see if maybe they were continuing to feed the trend. So very interesting.
And I would encourage everyone to watch the documentary. The link is definitely going to wherever you're listening or watching this. It'll be available for you in the show notes or the YouTube description. Watch this documentary. Yeah, the agents clearly are playing a part in this, Nicole, but there's a lot to it.
Of course. I was just explaining kind of like, I think, why they were drawn to Long Island.
Well, here's what I believe. I mean, if you found 40%, so Steve Harney, who's an economist, Keeping Current Matters, we've talked about Steve in the past, he had a tweet that said, wow, this is a blue state, number one, New York. This is the Northeast of America, where you have more highly educated people per capita than other parts of the country. And this happened there. So if you take this, I understand, and they go into the investigation that Long Island does have clear segregation that has continued into 2020. But if you spread this test across the United States of America,
absolutely. Well,
these numbers I bet are going to be similar, higher in some places, probably lower in other places. There's going to be, and it all depends on what 93 agents. How did they do the test? What all the, there's all kinds of questions. I'm sure Newsday relied on 2 nationally recognized experts in fair housing standards to evaluate
they were killing
the agents' actions.
They've been on the board. They've been on court things. This
is Fred Freeberg, who co-founded the Fair Housing Justice Center in 2004. Previously, he had led a national testing program for the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice, as well as 2 national paired testing programs for the Urban Institute. He has coordinated more than 12,000 fair housing tests. He was paid to help organize the testing. Robert Schwim.
Take a breath.
Robert Schwim of the Everett H. Metcalf Jr. Professor of Law at the University of Kentucky. This guy was also involved, who's the author of Housing Discrimination Law and Litigation. So these 2 guys were involved. But here's the other thing. When you watch the documentary, and you did, and they have the interviews of the white tester and the minority tester sitting side by side, that's when you knew this shit was done right. It was legit. It was real. When those 2 individuals, their emotions of going through the process as the tester.
Right. And they spent hours, days, I think even months
together,
being programmed to answer questions. Right.
I said this, role playing it out.
And they were still emotional to see. I mean, not that they wouldn't have been, but
they were in disbelief of the results that they found. And just based off of that.
And they were going to the same agent. So like if I was partnered up with you, we were both independently seeing the same agent,
So
asking the same questions, giving the same criteria, and then the response from that agent from one to the other was wildly, drastically different.
Agent Ann, I'll just refer to her as Agent Ann. If you watch it, you get her full name and her brokerage and everything.
Yeah.
She physically met with, a white home buyer and a black home buyer. And that one was really bad. I mean, it was just really awful. To the white home buyer, when can you get started? Like almost like she seemed, we say commission breath. She had commission breath of like, when can you get started? I want to get you right out there. Like, when can you start looking at homes? She was driving the conversation of looking at homes with the black tester, and both of them met her in person in her office.
Right. Nothing was different. They were, as much as you could take any variable out, they did.
Nothing was different. And with the black tester, she said, this is quoting, I won't take out anyone unless you have a pre-qualification letter. She said none of that to the white tester in her office. Now, I don't know about you, Nicole, but anytime I get anybody to actually physically be in the office here and, in my real estate career, 100% of the time I close them. They buy a property 100% of the time if they actually come into the office, because you gain so much, even if it's long term. It's like, hey, I've met you now. I have a vested interest in you as the human. And if you even have to go through like credit repair or whatever, 100% of the time, those people that are committed to coming into the office buy. I mean, this person outright.
Well, and the agent
she
even
outright
committed,
didn't want to work with this
person. But the agent even committed to having them come into the office. I mean, that's a whole extra step too, unless they just walked in. Maybe they walked in.
It was crazy. The testing was extremely legitimate. Again, when you see the interviews of the testers, the white and the minority tester, and that emotion, you knew this was done with a lot of practice, with a lot of thought. 240 hours of secret meetings were recorded. 5,700 listings. That's just incredible depth and data that they went into.
Another thing that we should note too, because I did send this actually to a few other people, and people couldn't believe that they were even able to record these things. But I guess New York is a single person state where only one person
has to know about the recording. So
right.
obviously the recorder would know.
Right.
One of those situations.
Right.
You couldn't do that here in Connecticut, I guess, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming. I don't know the laws. I mean, gosh, I thought that was like the law everywhere, not being able to do that. But anyway.
And so here's the point, right?
I think there's multiple points.
There's multiple points, obviously, but this is clear. Let's just call it what it is. This is clear evidence of systematic. Did I say that right? Systematic?
You did.
Systemic?
Well,
I think it's systemic.
Oh, it is?
Not systematic. But it's like a word. Systematic.
We're trying to be big here. We're trying to be big here. Let's not try to be big. Let's keep in our own shoes.
No, this is clear evidence of systemic unequal treatment or racism, however you want to call it, right? And I mean, you had agents that knew they delivered unequal treatment and then wouldn't deliver a statement.
Well, right.
And wouldn't get on. Some people did participate. Some of these agents did participate and make at least a statement to Newsday. But some of them have just still been ignoring Newsday's calls to this day.
Yeah.
So
I think even as an agent, I think that, regardless of your whatever, I think it's certainly worth watching.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing that you can do besides being flabbergasted is to reflect. I mean, there were so many times that, they were talking about even schools or areas and like you have to, like as an individual, like reflect, like, have I ever done that? Have I ever
said don't go there because that school system is bad?
Right.
That is.
Even just have I ever treated anybody? Have I ever made anybody feel as though I've treated them differently?
And if you're bashing on a school system, you better have data to back it up, and you better bash that school system consistently across the board.
Well, you shouldn't be talking about school systems
with every single
at all.
No, you can talk about statistics.
Statistics, yes.
Behind school systems.
Well, but they're not saying that really. I mean, they're talking about nice. Like this woman's talking about, which areas are nice. I mean, that's not really giving.
You had one agent literally say the word steering. I'm not supposed to steer you, but I'm about to steer you,
Right.
and then went ahead and steered
Yeah.
that particular
So again,
buyer.
I think what's important to learn here too, and they did touch on it as well as education. You know, are agents being educated in fair housing? Are they taking it seriously? Are they understanding, you know, the significance of it and being lawful?
That's exactly right. It's going to come down to you, the broker, the team leader, the agent, the individual agent out there, to educate yourself. Don't rely on the 3 hours of continuing training that you're just going click, 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 next slide through anyways.
Well, did you watch too? Because they had they actually went
Oh,
to
boy.
the meeting and the woman didn't even talk about fair housing.
She completely skipped over. She goes, I think that covers that.
Yeah.
It was
So
very
it's
flippant.
interesting.
It was just like, yep.
Again, I think I mean, whether you have a good leader or not, I mean, I think that there is a lot of, you know, you have to be self-responsible, like be responsible for yourself. You don't because you can't blame somebody else if they didn't teach you. Yeah. I think you need to take the initiative to learn and to continue to learn.
One thing I know for us, we're doing training on it this week. We're doing 2 pieces of training on this investigation and then one with an attorney on treating everyone equally. Not saying that we have any issues with unequal treatment. We've never had an issue, but I want to be so educated on this topic that we're part of the solution, right, and not part of the problem. And I think that's what everybody can do, and whatever your field is, your local community, how can you be part of the solution? I'm for people protesting and speaking their mind. This is America, baby. Like, speak your mind. But also become part of the solution. Take action. A protest is a start of a conversation. It's not action to actually solving a problem, right? I'm for it. But I'm also for people digging into what they know best. We know real estate best. How can we make change in our little world? We have a very small piece of the puzzle here of the community.
Right.
Real estate in our local community.
Well, and clearly we're super influential in those communities as well. So
and so how can you educate your people to actually be ahead of this? Ahead of this is the wrong word. To be somebody who calls out unequal treatment in their office, who identifies it, who's educated on it thoroughly, and who treats everybody the same in every single situation.
Right.
So we're going to train on this. We're not going to forget about this. We're going to continue to work to be better at this and continue to build systems that align with doing everything the same for others. I mean, one buyer got sent like 90 listings and the other one 0, like
in
the
totally different
there.
areas. Yeah, no, it was very interesting. And I'm hopeful that this, cause we actually, we talked about this documentary back in January with our predictions for the year. And I'm hopeful because look, it was published.
Brad Inman predicted when we did the 2020 predictions that it would win some kind of Emmy.
Yeah. So again, I mean, it's unfortunate everything that is happening and that, but it's also very much fortunate